So I'll begin. I mean, all interviews kind of begin with, he needs no introduction. You actually don't. I mean, your social media followers, lately your social media content, etc. I mean, you're more often. I don't think our reach compares to what you have. But will anyway, I'll not try to introduce you, but there is one line that I want to read out. Whether it's a fact or fallacy, I mean, that you can explain later. But Entrepreneur Magazine did a piece on you, and it described Rocky Mohan as the country's leading liquor baron for keeping alive the legacy of India's best loved drink, Old Monk Rum. Uh, all fact, right? So this we are not contesting.
No, we're not.
Yes. So I think we will kind of drift in and out of topics, but what I want to really begin with, and I want to bring in snippets from the conversation that day. Uh, to begin with, I think in terms of, consumption numbers, India is doing great. Different interpretations of that number, we'll not get into that, but, India is consuming more alcohol and different kinds of alcohol. The state revenues for many states is around 50%. So the revenues have been rising. We are seeing way more action in terms of new brands and new entrepreneurs coming up. So all this would kind of seem like, if I have to use a startup reference, this would seem like the perfect ground for, new alcohol startups to come up, or, older legacy families to probably come up with older, newer brands, which can grab, kind of a headlines year after year. Would you agree? Do you think, 2024 onwards would be perfectly fertile ground for such innovation and action?
Thank you very much, Om. Madeira is a good platform, and I'm glad I'm on it. And thank you for choosing me for this occasion. I personally think that the Indian alcohol industry still continues to be completely choked at the throat by the state governments because of the amount of revenue that they generate. It's a legacy business which we have inherited from the time of the occupation of India by the British. Those laws have not changed. We've got archaic laws dating back to 1870 and 1880. Most of the country produced alcohol in the beginning purely for the British soldiers or the Indians who were employed with British Army or the Britishers themselves. And because Scottish people were so responsible in the occupation of India, it's a misnomer. We say the English were, but actually it was the Scottish who occupied India. We created a legacy of brewing and whiskey manufacture. As you must be aware, that more than 60% of all the alcohol that sells in this country is whiskey. 60% is whiskey. And 2/3 of all the alcohol we sell in this country, which is worth almost 200,000 crores, is country liquor. So even then, the numbers are huge. Establishing brands in any alcohol industry is one of the most difficult tasks you can perform. It's not easy. Number one, you have to have very deep pockets if you want to make something big. Yes, you can be a craft distiller, sell about 1,000 cases a year, sell every bottle for whatever XYZ value, and hope to make some money out of it. Yes, if that's your aim, yes, there is opportunity, like all these craft gin manufacturers who have suddenly erupted all over the country. But really, at the end of the day, I think it's a very deep pocket game. It's a game where one has to spend some serious amount of money. And recently, the big players, the likes of Diageo, likes of Pernod Ricard, have launched a few brown spirits. But they've had a very horrific task in making any headway in it, because predominantly every state has its own rules. So you can't have a national policy which can guide you to reach the ultimate goal. But if your aim is to predominantly be a craft manufacturer and be happy with maybe 5,000 cases a year or 4,000 cases a year at a very high premium value, then it's a business which is mom and pop store business. It can make good money for you, but it's not a national business. So launching brands, one has to do with a great deal of caution, a great deal of knowledge, and a great deal of understanding. And we have noticed that a number of our whiskies in this country still continue to be blended with Scotch whiskey. So Scotch whiskey comes into the country, you blend it with local spirits, and you then call it a whiskey and sell it. So we are still very dependent on the kind of legacy that's been created by brown spirits, which were created outside this country.
I think, yeah, the issues, and this is something that, most of the people that we have spoken to the industry have echoed. We'll probably come to the positive parts later in the sense, I mean, is there a silver lining in all this, especially in the policy space? But, as you said, Indian whiskey is still being blended with Scotch, and that is still aspirational. I mean, I don't think Indian whiskeys are doing well, but I don't think in terms of the consumer's mind space is still the aspired for brand. And coming to, I'll probably, skip a few steps and come to this. When do we start? I mean, even that day we talked about the heritage liquors of India. And in fact, we opened this series with an interview with Magandeep, and he also said the same thing, that India is sitting on thousands of years of history of distilling and brewing. Each of our states, most of our states have probably not distilled or refined yet, but we are sitting on our own heritage liquors. Each state has a craft liquor of its own. Right now, I think 2024, it looks like a very distant dream. But is there a pathway? I mean, especially because you come from a family which has established a brand over a century, that's lasted a century. So, looking deep into the future, what do we need to do that, let's say Mahua or a Feni or a Rehandia can become that kind of a globally aspired for brand? And or is that just a daydream? It doesn't work.
Om, I'll draw a parallel for you. We consider these heritage liquors, as we call them, manufactured out of saffron, made out of maua, made out of honey, made out of various other ingredients. Feni, for example, you've got this liquor from Odisha, which is like sake, made out of fermented rice. All these products are very generic and extremely raw. And when I say raw, they don't sit well on the palate till such time you have not been used to it. And I'll draw the same parallel with European products, which were also very localized to small places, especially in France and Italy. But they got very localized and finished where they started. Like, for example, products like made out of aniseed, which are available in France. It never left France. Or for that matter, you look at a product like a sochu, which never left the Philippines or Japan. They were left there. They just got contained there, were consumed by the local population because they were habitual in having it. Similarly, in India, now you look what happened to Feni. It's not left Goa. I mean, however much we try and bring it out of Goa, for that matter, the heritage liqueurs that you get out of Rajasthan, they've gone nowhere. They've been left there. They're consumed locally. And there is a very small little cult of people who keep it on their bar, but they never consume it. I was presented a few bottles some months ago. I mean, I've not been able to get two people to taste it because it's just a reservation in having alcohol, which is not satisfying the standards one is looking for in terms of purity and health. How many of us drink country liquor? So we're really talking of two very diametrically opposite worlds. The country liquor guy is only looking for a high. He doesn't give a damn what it tastes like. The other guy who's drinking is drinking very, very elitist products, and he's looking to aspire to do better. So I'm not predicting a doomsday scenario that nothing will ever happen, But till we don't have national policy, we are not going to be able to see anything that might happen which will be productive. Every state has its own policy, and that's not going to change because the constitution of the country will never allow that unless and until we rewrite the constitution. Because in our directive principles, it's very clearly mentioned that the government will aspire to bring about complete prohibition in the country. So I think there is a conflict of interest there. That's why in the concurrent list, alcohol is not there with the center. It's a complete state subject, while ethanol continues to be in the concurrent list. So that's again a very big contradiction in sorts, that you don't get policy. And because liquor policy is completely dependent on income, it becomes even more difficult to legislate. So my answer to your question is very simple, that I think in the long distance future, I don't think we are going to be able to create too many national brands. We may get a spark here or a spark there, but creating national brands at this point of time is very difficult, even for people like Bacardi, Brown-Forman, Pernod Ricard, or Diageo, the big players. They are finding it extremely difficult to establish any of their newer brands. You will see we continue to gravitate to the old black labels, red labels, black and white, VAT 69, but we don't gravitate to the Godavans or the Latitudes and all the rest that are there. We still drink Officer's Choice as a whiskey, which is really the preeminent, I think is probably the largest selling whiskey in the world. But that's been around now for about 40 years. So that's a long time. So it's taken its time to reach where it's reached. But similarly, if somebody makes up their mind to launch the brand today, then they've got to be ready for the long haul.
Yes. As you said that day, even that, as Old Monk, you never advertised. So I'm not too, again, kind of going around the question a bit, that, is this a branding issue? Is this a quality of the liquor issue? Or do you think it's a consumer perception issue which needs to be, beyond policy? I think policy is something that we'll come back to later. But let's say the new startup, and we are seeing this kind of transformation in other sectors, where there are heritage businesses, there are deep set processes, and a new smaller player kind of makes an impact, or at least makes a small change. What aspect should a new brand play on, if at all? Should that be, because policy is, I think, that will be the toughest nut to crack, but consumer perception or creating an aspirational brand, do you think that can be done in a shorter period of time?
Very good question. I don't think I have a very concrete answer to that. I could say to you, yes, it might hit, it might work. It can be working very well in a localized area. For example, we've had a few launches of some craft beers, but even there you have noticed how the graph has gone completely down. Yeah. These very big players have suddenly vanished from the scene. They're available, but they're not pushing the advertising hard enough, because the cost of advertising is just outstripping what you can make on the brand. Because the end goal of every single alcohol brand that will come out would have to be to sell some volume and be available in at least 50% of the country. We at Monk recently launched Old Monk Coffee, and we did an Old Monk Amber. Now, unfortunately, if I put it on my social media, I get so much demand to ask me, why is it not available here? Where is it available? Why is it not available? So sometimes you think to yourself, is it really worth my while to advertise or talk about it? Because really you're creating an artificial demand which you cannot fulfill. And that causes so much of a problem because of the legislation that controls the movement of spirit and alcohol from one state to the next.
Sure. Yeah. I think, this is a conversation that we will continue at Madeira. And we said we want to talk about, numbers, but in a different sense. When we talk about export numbers, we don't exactly think of the alcohol industry as a key revenue generator. That is one. Second, lately, Indian whiskeys and gins have been hitting international news headlines. But whether that's a trend that will continue over the years and the same brands will kind of outlast others, or is just good luck. We don't know that. But what we want to look at is globally speaking. I mean, within the boundaries, I think we have a lot of, as you said, regulation is a big issue, consumer perception is another issue. But if we look at the global market for Indian alcohol brands, uh, is there something that the brands are not doing? And I'm asking you this because, globally, I think Old Monk would probably be the most well-known Indian brand. Uh, and as you said, not because of advertising. So is that a lesson in Old Monk, or something that Old Monk hasn't done that others can do, which, Indian brands who want to go global?
Okay, let me be very honest in my answer here. Where does Old Monk sell outside this country? Where is the demand generated? The demand is generated in all Indians who live abroad.
Yes.
For it to transition from Indians to the local population, I probably think we may not have managed to do much of it. Maybe 5% of all the exports we do may be consumed by the local inhabitation of that place. We are predominantly banking on the Indian diaspora living outside the country. And that's where the majority of our sales take place. I mean, our largest exports go to the UAE because there's a huge diaspora of Asian people who live over there. But for us to transition from a Spinneys or a Great Eastern or one of these great big consolidators to a five-star hotel there is an extremely difficult task. Um, it's a difficult task even here in India at one point of time. Five-star hotels didn't carry any Indian brands. They used to predominantly carry only foreign brands. But now they've started carrying Indian brands, a few and far between, Old Monk being one of them. But like I said, our exports may be large, but predominantly it's to the Indian diaspora. So we haven't yet transitioned across to selling to the world, contrary to what they have achieved, where they bought a brand in this country and they've been able to come into the Indian populace.
Okay. So while we wait for audience questions, if you have any questions, you can unmute, ask, or you can put that in the chat. While the questions come, I have one last. I mean, it's not a question; it's a thought. What we saw with the number of people, Indian consumers, alcohol consumers, who now currently either know of a sake or a soju or have tasted one is pretty impressive. And this came on the back of, let's say, for Korea, it came on the back of K-pop, it came on, on the back of the TV series, etc. So you see that alcohol industry actually benefits if that is a cultural affiliation worldwide. I mean, it can ride on other kinds of uh, cultural tools. It can be music, TV, etc., etc. So, I mean, I know you said you don't have a definite answer, but do you think if that is, I don't know why Bollywood they could not do that for us. I mean, maybe Old Monk needed to be shown in more Bollywood movies. Uh, but do you think, I mean, we need to wait for that kind of a wave, or is this something that the alcohol companies themselves can push?
The Censor Board of India is not very eager for any product to be displayed. So I don't know if you've noticed over the years, Old Monk has been seen in many, 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 many movies of Bollywood. But how do they show it? They show the bottle with the label turned the other way. However much we may try, there was one particular film of Shah Rukh Khan in which I think it was called Rais or something, in which he's standing inside a shop and behind there's a whole bunch of Old Monk that is loaded there. Now, he did that on his own, but he managed to get away because he was able to haze out the background completely. But the Indian Censor Board does not allow display of alcohol, and they don't even encourage smoking on Indian screens. So at this point of time, for us to break through and say that on TV we'd like to show somebody drinking old monk, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen even in Bollywood. You do get some of the actors, talking about it in their interviews. I've seen a couple of very big actors talk about their love for Old Monk. But that's a very personalized thing. And these are not promoted by us. They are all done by them themselves. It's just their own love and passion for the product that makes them talk about it. So we really can't do much about getting in there, however much we may want to. But I believe that the moment that is permitted, it will become so crowded that the exclusiveness would again get completely impaired.
I think the only
So
alcohol brand that
I'm not really painting a very rosy picture and saying that nobody else can get into the alcohol industry. After all, let's face the fact that Diageo, Pernod, and all other foreign brands have come into the country. A lot of wine is selling in the country, but it's a process of education. It's going to take its time. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah. So I think the brand that benefited most from Bollywood is VAT 69. So
Oh yes, in the early days, I remember Pran and Prem Chopra monopolized VAT 69.
Yeah. So,
but never the hero, huh? But never the hero.
Not Bachchan. I think Amitabh Bachchan even.
He did that. I thought only villains did it.
Anyone in the audience has a clue? Tell us. So there is a question from Ruth D'Souza Prabhu. Currently, there is a push among Indian alcohol creators to focus on Indian local ingredients in their creation. Gin with turmeric, rum with jaggery, etc. Is that a feasible way to go global and actually create a niche and an impact?
Any kinds of mixtures. I mean, everybody has tried mixers. I mean, India's gone through its white spirits phase. We started with a sudden proliferation of vodka, then the vodkas got flavored. Then we started with tequila. Tequila's got flavored, and now we're in gin, and gin is getting flavored. I think it's just it's a fashion statement. We'll go back to the original fundamental. Vodka will have to be colorless, tasteless, and odorless. Tequila will have to have agave, which is typical in the way it's manufactured. And gin will have to go back to actually distilling juniper berries to make it. But flavoring is a very short-term thing. It basically makes a lot of money for the bartender because he can cheat on you. I mean, in the sense, not really cheat you, but they give you the most inferior product with the highest possible price, and they cover it by putting a lot of ice in it. So if you notice, they give you a big cube of ice and it fills up the glass to the top, while actually they're only imparting with about 30 ml of drink. So I think these flavored products are mostly for cocktails, not for the real connoisseur of the product. The connoisseur will stick to the original. So I don't see a future in these blended products.
Okay.
And just to draw your attention, Ruth, to what happened in Sikkim, there used to be a pan liqueur that used to come out of there. I'd like you to please find out where that pan liqueur is today.
I think she has another comment where she is saying, a lot of brands are catering to an Indian palate. So is there such a thing as a country-specific palate? Which you, I think, answered through your pan reference. Yeah. So the second question is from Tanushree Bhaumik, and this is something that we have been talking about. There are many of us, not just me, who think Old Monk has dominated the market for a very long time, and it will be nice to see new brands of rum. So her question is, we are all seeing a sudden and a surge of kind of a new Indian rums, especially what is branded as agricultural rum on the aisles. What is your take on it? And is rum the next big thing in India after gin?
Let me answer that very clearly. Rum is predominantly consumed in the winter months So it's highly seasonal.
It's suddenly gone off.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
No, that's it. Yeah. Yes, we can.
You can hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So what I was saying was that, I mean, sorry, I lost my train of thought. The question was that,
we will majorly drink it in winters. Yeah.
Yeah. So predominantly it's a winter product and very popular with the armed forces where it's connected with. Why it is connected to the armed forces is legacy. There are a lot of stories and elements attached to it, especially the Navy. But yes, there is a great future in rums in this country. But we've got to remember that it's like a product which will be drunk for 50% of the year, unlike whiskey. That's why I told you earlier that 60% of the entire IMFL market is controlled by whiskey and whiskey alone. Rum would constitute maybe 20%, maybe 30%, and the balance goes to white spirits. Gin is a phase. I'm telling you today, just like vodka was a phase, tequila was a phase, gin is a phase. It'll last for a few years, and then suddenly the next best thing will come. You will have changes, but the traditional drinks will stay in place. Like in South India, if you go, brandy is the biggest selling product. At the moment the month of October arrives, everybody wears their jackets and they're ready to start drinking brandy because it says doctor's brandy on it. And they can justify their drinking habit by saying doctors prescribed it for winter. So that used to be the old story. Similarly, if you go to West Bengal, rum comes into place at Pujo and then stays on till March, and then all of a sudden it vanishes. The sales drop very dramatically, very similar to how we drink beer. We peak in the summer and we completely lose out in the winter. In the winter, I don't think I've heard anybody or seen anybody drinking beer. So it's something to do with highly seasonal. But yes, rum is a good product to work on. India is associated with spiced rums. I think we tried with a few white rums. Bacardi ultimately did not become a product that sells by itself. It became a blending product. So it's used predominantly to make cocktails. Indians are veering towards cocktails because all alcohol initial inception, they all want to get into cocktail because it's sweeter to taste and easier to drink. And they get habituated thereon, and then they can get on to plain spirits and so on and so forth. The same historical background, as I may say, that wine came in as an infant product, but today it's proliferated where it's considered to be classy to have a glass of wine in your hand at a cocktail party. So I think these things will evolve. The Indian consumer obviously is becoming more discerning, started understanding, and the more he or she travels, the more they expose themselves across the world. I feel there's a great opportunity there to be exploited. But I don't want to give anybody any false hope that you get into the liquor business and you will suddenly start doing all kinds of miraculous things. But yes, there is a future if you do it correctly, very similar to the craft gins that are coming out of these smaller states. I think there's great value there. And I think it's worth your while to choose the right product to get into the future. But rum, yes, I think there's a great opportunity because we have huge amount of molasses in this country, and you can certainly manufacture some very high-end rums here.
I think Amar's question. Yes, Manaswiti, please go ahead.
Okay, it's been very, very interesting to listen to what has been stated. I had two questions. One is that Lord Bilimoria had come to Stockholm once, and he had talked with some gusto about having created Cobra as a beer which would ideally complement Indian food because it wasn't as gassy. And he was able to create a market for it, which lasted. So my question to Mr. Mohan, whose background in food is probably even more impressive than his background in liquor, is that with the growing popularity of Indian food, if we are able to, with the help of internationally respected chefs, build up a recognition of Indian wines or Indian alcohols, which will complement the Indian food, which is gaining popularity on its own merit, would that not increase the market for Indian products? The question is long enough. I'll keep the second question for Madeira.
So I'll quickly try and summarize this. So Karan is an old friend, and I've had a long association with him, and he's done phenomenally well with Cobra, and I think great compliments to him. And he still continues to be involved with the liquor industry one way or the other in the UK. But I mean, look at it purely from this point of view. What did they have to ultimately do? They shut down all supplies out of India, and they had to brew out of the UK, both in the case of Kingfisher as well as in the case of Cobra. So there was no Indian product. There was just an Indian entrepreneur who was saying this is India's originated beer or India's originated alcohol product. So unfortunately, I can't draw any inspiration from that. I'm not trying to run anybody's business down. I'm just saying that the whole logic of exporting out of India was completely defeated when they started bottling locally in the United Kingdom, both in the case of Kingfisher as well as Cobra. I hope that answers one part of your question. The second part of your question, yes, I certainly agree. Indian wines can easily be paired with Indian food, but Indian food is based on spice and multi-level tasting patterns. I don't know whether it's going to be that easy to pair wine. We haven't been able to do it till now, except in the case of having a Prosecco or a champagne with Indian food, which is bubbly enough to take away some of the spice from your mouth. But otherwise, if you have a high tannin red or you have a very sprightly white, I don't think they work very well with Indian cuisine because our layers keep changing. Our food is not singular. It's got a lot of multiplicity in it. And I think combining wine with Indian food may be an extremely difficult task. And that is one reason why it hasn't happened till now. We've tried to do a few wine dinners in which we've tried to pair Indian food with wines, but it just doesn't work. It's a very difficult job, except in the case of, like I said, Prosecco and champagne. I hope that answers your question.
No, but not just you've talked only of the wine, but the other liquors. For example, I personally find that I'm not a chef of any standing. I'm just a home cook. But my foreign guests have really loved mahua at the end of an Indian meal instead of a brandy. So what I was thinking was more that if we could somehow, I know I'm dreaming maybe, but if we could somehow get some internationally recognized wine promoters, wine connoisseurs, and introduce them to some of our excellent stuff and get them to say it's nice. I mean, it's not Shah Rukh Khan, but get the Hollywood equivalent of Shah Rukh Khan to say this is good. Then we might actually break into the global market. I like dreaming.
I'll take a leaf out of your book, and I only hope we can do it because it might be a great idea. But certainly, to concur with you, I've served Old Monk Rum as a liqueur to many of my guests after a meal. Certainly, we've done that. But it doesn't catch on. People don't come to you at the bar and say, "Listen, I'll have some Old Monk before I go home." They still tend to stick with more of the liqueurs and stick with cognac, though cognac is almost dead now. It's a dying brand, it's a dying product. But after dinner drinks are getting more and more rare as we go on. I think there's an international move now towards not drinking after dinner, pre-dinner drinking and during the course. But these are all fads, they keep changing. And, when I was much younger, drinking before dinner was the way to go. And you started drinking at 7 and you drank till 10 and then had your dinner and then went to sleep. So I don't think that practice now pertains because I notice people go out for their drinks and they don't have any dinner. So their drinks are accompanied with snacks. So I think styles are changing, times are changing. You're absolutely right. It just might work like in wherever you are. You have guests who like that idea. I think it could work, and getting a fantastic international Hollywood character to do it. Just to let you know, recently we had a wonderful video done by Dave, what's his name? That actor who acted in Life of Pi.
Dev Patel.
Forget his name.
Yes.
Dev Patel. He
Yeah.
and this other gentleman did a wonderful, wonderful comparison of Old Monk with some local rum, and they were both very, very complimentary about the quality of Old Monk. And that endorsement, I think, I posted somewhere on one of my social media channels. That was good. That was done extempo. Why it was done, I don't know, but somebody just decided to do it.
So we'll just take one last question. Amar, I think your question about homegrown beers, he's already referred to that. I mean, he said we saw an outpouring of local brands and now you don't see them anywhere, at least not at the same rate. So I'll take your first question. And Amar's question is, wine brands from India has seen growth, but you are saying other alcohols we need to be in it for a long haul. Is there a way to reduce that long haul?
That's a big question. I mean, I wish I knew the answer to that.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very multiplicity of actions that have to take place simultaneously. You have got to be at the right place at the right time, and it just might work. If you're suddenly, if Old Monk Rum is served as an aperitif at the Oscars in America, that might do miraculously well. You don't need to do anything after that. But will I ever get to the Oscars? I don't know.
Sure. Thank you, Tanu. I think, yeah, she kind of confirms that Amitabh Bachchan drank VAT 69 in Diwar and in Dawn. So we'll
Thank
probably
you for the
see
correction.
we'll probably see a hero endorsing alcohol in Bollywood. Okay, Banushriti. So we'll kind of I know we can go on and that will be
Sorry, I just wanted to I didn't want to hog the thing, but I wanted to leave Mr. Mohan with a positive saying that when I was in Stockholm, it was the director of System Bolaget, which, by the way, is the biggest importer of alcohol in the world because it's the entire Swedish government. They said Amrut was one of their best-selling whisky.
How wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that. I really am.
In fact,
So-
till
But just
then, I
to-
didn't even know about Amrut.
Yeah, so isn't that wonderful that they knew about Amrut and you didn't? So I mean, it's very difficult, like I said, to penetrate the market. But it's a time-honored tradition. That is why, if you notice, when Scotch whiskies or bourbons talk of themselves, they give you a story and a heritage which goes back 100, 200 years.
Yeah.
Nobody says that I was born day before yesterday, hence you must drink my whiskey. Everybody will tell you that I was born 150 years ago and I've been continuously distilling for 150 years, hence you must drink my whiskey. So I think it's a process of time. We've had a lot of browbeating with Old Monk. I mean, we were hugely on top, and then we got hit by state laws, brought us down. We had to reinvent ourselves to get back where we were. So we've been through a process which has been quite a roller coaster ride. But happy to say we are back right on top. But it's taken doing. It's taken doing because the laws of each state keep changing, and we find it extremely difficult. So we are really not always constantly on top. We have to keep reinventing ourselves.
But thank you, Banushriti. I think we wanted to end on a positive note.
And one more point, Om, I'd like to make
yes.
here is that we must be fully aware that India consumes its alcohol in a very funny way. And the ratio is 1:2:14 or maybe even 20. So one is the 750.
Mm-hmm.
2 bottles, if one of 750 sells, there will be 2 bottles of 375 that will sell. And there will be 20 bottles of the 180 ml that will sell. So we keep looking at the big bottle, but the actual sales of the product takes place in the 180 ml size. And that's all for domestic brands I'm talking about. That's a very, very big pointer of the consumption patterns that you will see across the country. Nobody will tell you that, but I've just told you. No, nobody will tell you that, but that's exactly what happened. Any product that is not in the 180 ml sector will not be able to really capture a very large market.
And I think that also informs your opinion about the gin trend, that the volumes will not be there.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We'll kind of explore this. We'll probably, most probably, and we will love to see what Madeira. We will love to work towards making that happen. And thank you, audience, for joining. We will continue the conversation over the next few sessions and also at Madeira. Thank you, Rocky sir. Thank you for.
Well, thank you very much, Om, and thank you everybody for being here. Thanks very much.
Thank you.